Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I'm here with...
Hey, all you frightlings and grieflings, it's me, Margaret, and welcome to yet another wonderful, fantastic, spooktacular episode of the Femme Fatalities. Today, we are talking about one of them creepy movies about spaces you really don't want to go into. Anna, where are we going today?
Well, I really would love to shout it from the rooftop, but I'm going to have to tell it to you from underneath the stairs. That's right. We're talking about none other than the 90s weirdo, amazing, social commentary, delightful, delicious film, The People Under the Stairs. Before we get into it, there's a lot of triggers. Cannibalism, greed, socioeconomic disparity. What else, Margaret?
Kidnapping, coercion, probably some brainwashing as well. Yeah.
Oh, incest.
Oh, yeah. Incest.
We'll get to that. You can probably tell by my grimace, not my favorite part of the movie.
No.
Also, animal death. And, the kills aren't super gory. I feel like that's just a sideline of the movie, in a sense. But definitely, the socioeconomics of it are pretty apparent throughout the film.
Yes, definitely. This is a movie making a point about socioeconomic disparities, which apply now. I really feel like it also reflects in the 90s, when the 90s, it was becoming more publicly aware of slumlords, of landlords that really took advantage of people that did not have money and would not take care of the place. So then they're living in squalor, and it's like, well, you still have to pay your rent, but I'm not going to fix up the place. I'm not going to make it livable. I mean, our main character, they're living in a place that needs to be condemned.
Yeah.
And because his mom is sick and dying, and again, these landlords are like, I don't care. You still owe us rent. I don't care that your mom's dying. Figure it out, which leads him to then want to commit a crime with the other two characters, because he's like this 10-year-old boy maybe that's trying to take care of his family, because there's these greedy, incestuous,
like creepy elite, well-off, rich families that used to have a funeral parlor, and now they invest in buildings, right? And then we're also we're going to let the building collapse. All of the residents are going to have to leave. We don't care what happens to them. And then we're going to build high rises, gentrification at its finest. Realistically, I mean, there have been so many communities historically that have felt the negative impact of gentrification. I mean, just look at the meatpacking district in New York. Prime example. You have all of these homeless communities, low-income communities. Then you're going to build all of these fancy schmancy new apartments, coffee shops, whatever else you need. Where is everyone going to go? And no one has an answer, and it's very disheartening. I think it's also kind of cool, though, that in this film we see several actors who went on to be in a lot of other films, like Fool. He's the kid in The Sandlot. Also, AJ Langer was in My So-Called Life. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my god, that's Rianne. And then Ving Rhames. I mean, and he has led a very successful film career.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Cast is great. And like you were talking about, really how this movie is talking about gentrification and what happens to the people that are pushed out, so that historically the white rich people can have the land. Here again, white people taking land like they're entitled. They have a right to it when they don't. And then what happens to the people who live there? What happens to the community? And then like, they don't care. They're like, well, we want this area, like Anna was talking about, like the meat packing district. We want this real estate. So because we have the resources, we're going to take it, which is really sad. I think Anna and I both agree. What would it look like if people that had resources actually use those resources to help build, to strengthen communities, to say, okay, look, I'm not going to take your land from you. How do we make the projects so that people that live there have all the resources that they need so they can get good paying jobs? And so the projects are just now a housing unit and not something that, again, they're called projects. And so people now have these stereotypical images that with projects come crime, poverty, people lower socioeconomics, and not, there are people that are living there that are really trying to do their best. Yeah. How do we help them do their best?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I agree with you, Margaret. I mean, there are so many stereotypes about the Ps, Section 8, all of these different housing circumstances. The ratio of negative incidences and occurrences compared to the ratio of persons living in the Ps or in Section 8, there is no comparison. And I think that our society, particularly the rich Western mentality of that limited percentage that has so much control and contribution, wants us to believe that this narrative, if you live here, if you're near here, if you fall into this housing category, then you must behave in this way. You are this type of person. You're, whatever it is. No one is born and as a child says, I want to grow up and I want to be a criminal. I want to be subject to negligence of others. No one says that. And I get very emblazoned about this because people don't take the time to understand. And it has taken me time to try and understand and hear other people out as well. I didn't just come into these sorts of subjects and topics trying to hear and understand other perspectives either. It is something that everyone really needs to work on. But I think the characters in the film, so the quote unquote couple that Fool and the older two guys are going to try and break in and take their gold and their money. I mean, they, to me, represent the most demented version of that upper 2%, right? They are bizarre. Before we even learn anything about them, it's like, okay, something's definitely a little off here. The fact that, I guess, the brother husband, because we do find out they're siblings. So brother husband is like walking around in BDSM gear. Like that's his fancy pants outfit that he wears when he's trying to accomplish a task. Which is just kind of different to me. Because typically, in today's society, you wear it like in a dungeon or in the bedroom or at a photo shoot. Not necessarily jogging through the hallways. And it's just peculiar. They're very odd. And, a lot of the time when people amass a certain level of wealth, they are known as eccentric. So I think that's the very much meaning of that word, maybe not in a typical way. The other thing too is, you touched on sharing that wealth, sharing that knowledge. We find that they have this safe that's just filled with like American gold eagles, American gold buffaloes, dollar bills, $100 bills, all of these different things. They could be sharing that with the community. Like, I don't understand. It's just sitting there. It's not doing anything.
I think you tap into, right, that scarcity, that if I have resources and I share them, then I'm not going to have the resources. And so here they're hoarding these resources, and they're, like you said, eccentric, they're weird. And you also touched on the stereotypes, and we look at projects or people that live in poverty, and when there is violence, that is because there are no resources. So people have to start to fight for resources. That's where gangs come in, because now they're trying to safeguard the community's resources, protect the community, while also fighting over resources and terrorizing the community. And then people outside of that say, well, it's violent there. Or I hate when people say those people. No, it is a product, because the wealthy are so afraid that they're going to lose their resources that they can't share. And so they leave people fighting over resources, like dogs fighting over bones. And they're like the dog owner. They're like, I can't believe our dogs are fighting over bones, because you have a whole refrigerator full of bones. And so I think you touch on, right, that they have all of this and yet they can't share, and yet they want more. And even, right, yeah, it was weird. He's walking around in BDSM clothing. And I feel like that kind of reflects too where society was, that anybody outside of, and our society's still here, the sexual norm, then you're eccentric, you're weird, when really he gives people that are into BDSM a bad name, because he's just ew, he's creepy, he makes your skin crawl, and it's like, couldn't we have given him like another fetish? Like, couldn't we just like walked around like wearing a Tarzan loin or something, just to make,
or just like shown him like looking at pictures of feet or something. I don't know, like just something more, you know, I don't know. It was just, and when I used to watch the movie all the time when I was a kid, so it was different watching it as an adult, but I was just like, man, that guy's got a weird outfit, and now I'm like, oh, it's a BDSM. But I think too, even looking at their treatment of the kids, right? So, we have the daughter who, you know, like good girls don't get punished, like these sorts of things. And, you know, you have to be this virginal person. And then, like, they're trying to find a boy child, as they term it in the film. And they're very, like, hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. So when you do something bad, you get punished to live under the stairs. And, you know, if you say something or you're cross with them, we presume they cut your tongue out. If you hear things you shouldn't, I guess you're deafened. And then if you see something you shouldn't, you're blinded, right? So this is not a place a child wants to visit. And I think too that they touch on with the daughter, once Fool is in the house, you know, there's the whole male figure from a different socioeconomic background trying to steal the pride and joy daughter away, and a lot of those sorts of issues too, that we often see with wealthy families and their viewpoints and opinions of other people.
Yes, that you can't, like, she can't be with Fool because he's impure and he's going to steal their resources because he doesn't come from the same resources. Again, that greed and that prejudice, when Fool is such like a great person. Again, the way our society, like, yeah, that's a great kid, or what can like, how do you guys get to build a friendship?
Right.
No, they want, I don't even know what they're looking for, because they have all those poor boys underneath the stairs, and then there's the boy that is her friend that she feeds. Yeah, Roach.
I just love his name, Roach. Yeah, poor Roach. He's like he's like the little he's like the mini hero in the movie. I definitely think Fool is certainly our protagonist. But Roach is like a mini protagonist. But it's just it's bizarre too, because you find out, like, and we touched on it earlier, that these rich people, they originally owned a funeral home. And I think for me, as a thanatologist, I found that particularly captivating because how often do we hear stories talk about one bad apple ruining the bunch, right? Compare the death industry to the peas. One greedy mortician who's not embalming properly, who's not facilitating proper casket procedures, who's reusing materials, who's not properly requesting burial submissions, who's cremating instead of submitting for burial. All of these different things that can happen in the death industry, how that impacts the mourning families, how that impacts the deceased, how that impacts business, right? All at the greatness of the almighty dialer, right? There are very few and far between morticians, but I bet anyone who's listening can think of one mortuary horror story or more that they've heard. And let's not even get into like the necrophile stories, which I do have to say is probably one of the most insulting and offensive things you could ever say to someone who works in the death industry. The majority of us that are in this industry in one form or another do it because we want to support our communities, the persons in our communities, and provide outreach and support and services to our communities. But once again, one horror story gives this impression. I mean, a lot of people, I think, when they think about a mortician, they think about like this creepy, gangly person who's hanging out in the shadows, lurking. And that's really not what it's about either. But once again, when you look at the peas, one story of gun violence leads masses to think, okay, if I drive by the peas or I'm in this area, this is going to happen. No, it's probably not. It's just your mind and society leading you to believe that it will.
Yeah, it's as you're talking about like all these different stereotypes that the projects are going to have these stereotypes. Morticians are going to have these stereotypes. And that how do we break those? And as you were speaking, you also touched on how commercialized our death industry has become here in the United States. Like 100 years ago, if I died, my family would be tending to my body. They would be doing all of this. And now we are so far removed. And so now we have this image that like the mortician is this creepy person that only does stuff with bodies and their whatever it is because of our own. It's become, oh, do you remember that term we learned? Aries talked about it in his book about how now it's like this, like death is almost like a perversion. It's like a taboo. It's like almost pornographic. So that is now our new stance on death. And so now we have to be like, oh, here's all these stereotypes that we believe. Totally. Like Anna was saying, we hear these stories and we just believe that that is across the board.
Yeah, totally. And it's just because of how sterile our society has become. And, you know, we've joked about this before. And whenever I tell someone that I'm a thanatologist and explain what that is, I have two reactions. One, I absolutely love someone will talk to me and express an experience that they've had or perhaps something they're going through or someone they know is going through. And it's a really beneficial, wonderful conversation. Or the other experience when they turn around and run away. Maybe not literally, but just the horror that, you know, you choose to do this with your life, you know, talk about death all the time. And, you know, it really speaks to how sterile our society is when it comes to matters of death. But the other thing is when it comes to matters of death in the movie People Under the Stairs, it's just like, oh, another one. Like, you know that the brother and sister, husband, wife, whatever, the couple in the rich people house will say, you know that this is not their first go around, like, killing people, because it alludes to, like, service people have come before, solicitors, like, all of these different groups. So you know kind of what happens, where they go and what happens to what remains of them.
Yeah, and that they're not questioned because they're the rich white people of the neighborhood,
Yeah.
even when Fool calls social services
Yeah.
to save the girl, and the cops show up, social services shows up, and they're just completely fooled
Oh, yeah.
by her, which is ridiculous. It's almost like, well, because we are rich and we're white and we live here, we could
Right.
never harm anybody, when they're the ones that are doing all the harm. And how quickly they're just like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, no, just believe us. And the cops are like, oh yeah, and they're like, cookies, coffee. Yeah.
Gross. Yeah, although I did think it was funny though, like after the police left, they're like, I hate cops. I'm like, well, that's like, you know, just kind of funny. To me, that
Yes.
for a variety of reasons.
Of course they hate cops. They're like kidnapping children, they're murdering people, they're robbing people. Like, they're not good people.
No, not at all. I mean, I would venture to say maybe they're subhuman on some level, but you know, we realize like they can't. I assume they have no bio children of their own since they are siblings. Ugh, gross. Sorry. Just that's like a toughy subject for me. It just, the incest stuff just makes my skin crawl. I'm so sorry, listeners. But it's just not, yeah. Anyway, so that's why they're like abducting these children, right? So they can have this nuclear model family. But it's also very strange too, right? Because they keep Alice locked in the house. And most elitist families want to show off their children and their accomplishments. So I thought that was something that was very different when we think about most rich elite people. They're like, oh, you know, this is my spouse and these are my adoring children and this is what they've accomplished. We don't have any of that in this film.
I took it as, if they let Alice out of the house, somebody might be like, that's my missing child.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
So they couldn't let
escape.
her out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how they kept everything hidden, it's almost that like, she's ours, we're gonna hide her, and even though we kidnap these boys and we don't want them now, we're just gonna keep them. We're gonna punish them because they can't go back to their parents because they're not good enough for their parents and they're not good enough for us, so they're just gonna become the people underneath the stairs. And we're just gonna treat them like animals, like cattle.
And I do wonder if on some level, like the antagonists, they know what they're doing is wrong. Like on some level. Because they do keep it hidden, you know what I mean? Or maybe they're just completely batshit crazy, which probably is what the truth of the matter is. But I
take it as they kept it hidden because they didn't want to get in trouble. Like I felt like they took pleasure. Like they enjoyed torturing these boys. They enjoyed knowing that these boys were in their basement starving and fighting each other. Like that made them feel good that they had that, and they just couldn't be public because society's not gonna. Then I'm like, oh wow, that's great. You have a basement full of kidnapped
kids,
children who are now adults, some of them.
Right, and we know they've been doing it for a long time because, like you said, they're young adult age. And yeah, I would definitely venture to say that they are sadists in the truest form. It's very, very strange dynamic. It's astonishing to me that they're so warped and they're able to maintain investments in businesses, though. But I think a lot of the time, some of which we don't need to name names, I'm sure several will come to mind when I say this, but some of the most elite, quote unquote, accomplished business people historically throughout the world have been some real sickies.
Oh, for sure. And again, it goes, this movie really touches on money does not make you a good person, does not make you somebody worthy of society. If anything, it shows the opposite, that the community comes together. They are looking for full.
Yeah.
They want to support him. They
Yeah.
listen to him. And then the community comes against
Mm-hmm.
the couple, which
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's like
I
saying
love
this
that.
is community.
That
I
is,
loved that they're like, community is community. And just because you have money does not mean that you have
Mhm.
community. There's wealth in money and
Mhm.
there's wealth in community.
Yeah. And it's just the end, like the ending of the movie, like you said, the community comes together. Like Fool's sister, I think she's called Ruby, and his grandfather, they tell people what is going on, and they're like, we're all going down there right now.
Mhm.
Because the community bonds are so strong. And,
Yeah.
you know, love and care and community trumps anything else that's out there. If you have that strong foundation and you have that support, that is more important and beneficial to an individual than any material item could ever be.
And that's how the rich keeps us separated, because the rich are the ones that are in power. They're the ones that have control, like this couple. And then, like Anna and I were talking about in the beginning, all the, projects are this, the poor are this. They keep us separated, and then we don't come together as a community, because when we come together as a community, the rich, the elite, are going to lose what they have because we are stronger in numbers.
Right.
And it's pretty sad that this movie still has that same message, like 30
years
later, to be like,
Yeah.
there's strength in numbers, community matters. It's not, the rich aren't all that. They may have the money, but we have more. Sad. So we're still there.
And, you know, speaking of which, apparently Jordan Peele is going to be working on a remake. Very excited for that. Interested to see the thematics that occur. I'm excited to see what he does with the rich couple too. I think they're going to be creepy, but in a different way than the original, so that'll be fun. But yeah, I really am interested to see his spin.
I love Jordan Peele's spin. I love his social commentaries.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you don't know, I'm a huge Jordan Peele fan, because I really do appreciate how he takes really hard subjects and doesn't shy away from how he delivers them. And he does it in such a beautiful way. It's almost like he punches you in your stomach and you're just like, thank you. That was I appreciate that punch in the stomach, because it's just, yeah.
And it's, every film that I've seen, I've really enjoyed of his. I have to say though, everybody was getting me really freaked out and psyched up about Gordy in Nope. And if you've been hesitant to see that because people are freaking you out about the Gordy scene, to me it was nothing.
I thought it was intense. I appreciate the message. Animals are animals. We can't tame animals, and as people, we are stupid. We're like, oh yeah, but it's an actor monkey or whatever it is, and we take for granted what we're really.
I thought it was going to be like more body horror, like shreds of flesh in the air, blood spatter, like hitting the audience. Like that's what was in my head. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is this is not bad at all. And also I have a thing with primates and primate attacks. So it's kind of this whole visceral fear. So like all of my friends who saw it before I saw it, they're like, oh my God, I don't think you need to see this. Like there's, you know, the whole Gordy thing. I was fine. Like it was fine. But yeah, you're right. Like trying to make something it's not and trying to control natural instincts, it really spoke on many levels to that. I just didn't, if you're worried to see it because you think it's going to be way, way, way gory, it's not. I maybe 5 cauldrons out of 10 for me.
It was more
Not that I'm
tense.
disappointed
Like,
because I didn't want to get scarred from a 10 out of
yes.
10 score.
Yeah. No, I would say, like, people that said, like, it was gory, I agree with you. It wasn't. The movie, though, has an atmosphere that I would say it's just a tense movie watching it the whole time. Like, you're bracing. It's uncomfortable. It's unsettling. I was really bothered because I didn't want anything to happen to the horses. And we know horses die in this movie. And so it was just this very, I give him credit because he just built this atmosphere. The whole movie, you're just like bracing, you know, so it's very anxiety inducing.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and you know what to expect. Like, and of
you're
course,
like waiting. You know it's going to happen, and you're
like, oh, what's next? But for me, of course, in a sense, it was soothing because, like, I spent so much of my childhood on my grandparents' farm, and they're on a ranch, and I'm like, oh, the farm. So I think that, you know, the relational thing there really helps. But yeah, I enjoyed the commentation on the spectacle and how we fall into viewing it, perceiving it, and becoming part of it in very, very quick sense. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah. Jordan, if you ever listen to this, I know you won't disappoint us. Very excited for this people under the stairs situation. Yes.
Yes. I think he's going to just, with his skills, he's just going to elevate people under the stairs. Also, People Under the Stairs is a 90s horror movie where themes were just put more in your face. It was just, and also to get shocked. Like, we're going to shock you and put this in your face. Movies now are very, I don't want to say subtle. They just do it differently. So it's almost like you're absorbing. It's like you're a sponge and you're set in the water and you're soaking up the water. 90s movies were just like, we're just going to throw everything at you.
Yeah. And now it's more of an introspective experience. Especially like with Jordan Peele and certain other directors, you know, that this is going to be some sort of statement on society or introspection. I mean, we could even argue that Ari Aster kind of falls into a similar category with Hereditary and Midsommar, Beau is Afraid, like all of those movies, even M. Night Shyamalan, to some extent, because there is so much commentary if you read between the lines and you really allow yourself to soak in what you're seeing.
Yes, I think you've touched on. I feel that we're blessed to have Jordan Peele, M. Night Shyamalan, these beautiful, brilliant storytellers that really are adding, like they're saying, the horror is what the world we live in. The horror is, and here it is, and I'm going to deliver it in this means, which I love. I really appreciate. Yes.
Yeah, and even if we look at some of our other casts, like Promising Young Woman, Joker, those are great examples of talking about what is really going on in the world and the horrors associated with that, and being cognizant in respect to those topics. So I know we've kind of gotten off of the subject of the movie a little bit, but I really think
the movie opened the door. We could argue that this movie actually paved the way to say, look, and this is Wes Craven, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Wes Craven really did start to pave the way in his social commentary, saying, hey, I'm going to open the door for people down the road. He did the original Last House on the Left, right?
Yes.
Is that him?
Yeah. I think it was.
So but he really...
Like, when we look at film genres, right? So we have horror, we have these directors that are, like, leading into what we're seeing now. But even, like, if we look back further, right? It's very rare to see, like, a drama or serious movie that leads us in. And one example, and it's going to sound so strange, 9 to 5. with Dolly Parton, they have the boss from hell. They're putting up with racism, sexism, unequal work environments, all of these things that are very valid issues, were issues at the time, are still issues, right? But it's a comedic spin to get people to identify with it. It's the same thing as horror.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree.
Yeah. So it's just seeing through the lens of a preferred film genre is a great way to escape for 90 minutes, but also to, you know, really encourage yourself to go out on a limb and think about things in a different way.
Yes, I'd agree.
Yeah. So, and I do have to ask you, who kind of captivated you? Who do you most relate to in The People Under the Stairs?
I'm gonna have to go with Roach.
Just
trying to help out, doing the best, maybe not always seen for listeners.
Mm-hmm.
I am a counselor, so I often feel like I am that person behind the scenes that is really providing support that people don't always know about, because I'm there. I'm not hiding in your walls like Roach is hiding in the walls. And I think as a kid, I thought that was like, oh, hiding in the walls and being able. I still, when I watch movies, I'm like, that would be really cool to have a house that I could just walk from room to room and like hidden in the walls. So
yeah, totally.
How about you?
I would say the grandpa, and the reason for that is, you know, he's delightful, and I think that he's very knowledgeable. Like when they come back with the coins, right? He's like, oh, these are such and such. We're going to be able to take care of your mom's surgery and find a new place to live and doing all of these things. He's thinking about the future. He acknowledges current situations and tries to find ways to get out of them and make them better. And I also think he is strong enough and foreseeing enough to get other people involved. Like, this is wrong, something's going on. He knew that that family was trouble, like the elitist rich family that owned the funeral parlor. And he says, I remember when they had the funeral parlor and all of these things happened. They are bad people. They are bad eggs. And then as Fool is telling him more and more, and he's finding all these things out, he's like, we have to do something. This can't just be happening. And he, along with his granddaughter, rallies the entire community together to help, you know, all of these people that are stuck in the house, to save Fool, to do all of these different things. And just his care and concern, not just for his family, but everyone. I really admire that.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that for you. And yes, he's such a beautiful character. He's such a wonderful character. And I could see that. You are the wisdom. She's the wisdom behind them fatalities. And I'm just,
no,
I'm the juvenile energy.
No. Are you trying to say I have an old soul? That's okay. I always, you
do have an old soul.
That's a big joke, actually, is that I'm like an 88-year-old trapped in this body. Like, this is just the vessel I have. My bio age is quite a ways away from, you know, catching up with the soul age. But no, I love your youthful exuberance, Margaret, and you're always like very peppy and optimistic and cheery, and sometimes this old lady in this young body needs that.
I love your wisdom. I'm just gonna be like my dad. He was like, I'm an 18-year-old trapped in this body. That's what he used to always say. And I will own it. I am immature. I am childlike. I am, especially if Anna lived near me, she would probably get more of just my crazy, annoying, childlike antics that come out more when people are in person with me. And I am whatever it is I'm fangirling about or acting like a child over something super glittery or whatever it is. And Yes, and Anna can be like, okay, honey, you go ahead and get that shiny little sticker. And I'm like, sticker!
I'll be like, get that sticker, and in case you need it, I have a first aid kit in my purse. Did you have a snack? Did you eat today? You know, all those things. No, but I think that's great too, and it's wonderful that we're so diverse, yet we have so many commonalities, and I think that's why we complement each other so well.
Yes, well said. Yes, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited. I think that we will eventually, it's probably going to be 2025. I haven't heard anything about a 24 release, but we will eventually revisit The People Under the Stairs once we see Jordan Peele's film, and I'm very excited to talk about that in the future, and maybe compare it to the original as well.
Ooh, me too. I'm excited. Come on, Jordan Peele, let's get that movie out.
Right? Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope that this cast made you think a little bit about issues that you're learning about or you are already aware of, and just maybe how this film relates to them and what you're seeing in reality compared to what is on that big screen. Until next time, make sure you keep sipping that Bruja brew and keep it creepy.
Yes, bye.